All right. Now let me share my screen. Okay, can you see my screen? Hello? Good. All right. Let's get started. Uh, and hey, if you have any questions, feel free to interrupt me at any time. Okay. Uh, Sorry. Sure. Yeah. Okay. Now you can see my screen, right? I mean, okay. Let me. Uh, uh, you see my screen here. Can you read this text here? Is the font size okay? Okay, good. Uh, so feel free to interrupt me at any time if you have any questions. Okay. So the what I'm going to talk about today. You see, this is the repository that has all the code that I'm going to show you, and then right here, Hangout topics. This is the content that I want to talk about today. This is what I'm going to talk about for sure, and then if there is enough time, I would also try to cover these other topics here, but that will depend on how efficient we are with our time. Okay, the time that I have available for this workshop is 2 hours, so hopefully we'll have time to cover everything. All right. Okay, so let me start with who is this Hangout for? So this is meant for web developers who know some JavaScript. Just a little bit is fine, but you have to know a little bit of it to be able to enjoy this Hangout. If you know AngularJS, that's a good thing. But if you don't know anything, that's okay too. You just have to have some interest in learning it, because AngularJS is like central to how this project is organized. All right. Now I also want to talk a little bit about Python and Django. How many of you are Python programmers? 13. Okay, so more than half the people there know Python. That's good. I'm assuming the other ones are PHP developers, or know some HTML and JavaScript. Okay. Please correct me if I'm wrong. Okay. So Python is a very easy to learn programming language. It's very simple, and it's interpreted, meaning that you don't necessarily have to compile it and then run the binary like say Java, right? And Python, it has a very straightforward syntax. Let me show just a little bit. There's a piece of Python code. You can see my screen there, right? This is how I create a class, and then these are attributes of the class, and this is a method of that same class, right? So Python is object oriented, and it's very simple. It's very straightforward, and it's very enjoyable to learn and to work with. Actually, I got to know Python about 3 years ago. Before that, I was working with Java for like 11 years, and I fell in love with Python, and then I actually started getting a little disappointed with Java, and that actually affected my work at the place at my day job at the time, and I actually changed jobs because of technologies. I was getting so frustrated working with Java and having to spend a lot of time to do simple stuff, and it all actually became started with freedom sponsors actually, because I started this new project, and I said, hey, I'm going to learn a new language to build this website. And then I was working with Java in the day and with Python in the night, and then I was getting frustrated because Java was kind of slowing me down and was making me take a long time to accomplish things. So after a while, I got a new job working with Python, which is where I work today. So yeah, this is my story with Python. Okay, and then there is also Django. Okay, because Django is, let me show Django tutorial. So what is Django? Django is a web application framework for Python. Okay, it's the most popular web framework for in the Python community. It's very easy to start a new Django application. They have this wonderful tutorial here that you can find, and if you follow it, you can get a simple web application up and running very fast. Okay, let me tell you a little bit about how a Django application is organized. So this Djangular3 project here that you have, it is a Django application. Okay, so when you have a Django application like this, it all starts with this manage.py file here. So every Django application has one of those, and then here you will have the main Django application, which in this case is called Djangular3. All right. So this Djangular3 here is the main Django application for this project, and this corresponds to this folder here, Djangular3. Now this guy here, it must have a few things in here. So these things are the settings py file, the URLs py file, and these are the WSGI. Okay, this settings py file is very important. This is where you configure everything about your application, like the database connection is specified in here. Okay, so this is important, and you also have a list of installed apps, because you see Django works with an app system where you can plug small web apps into your applications. So Django already comes with some apps that you usually want to add to your project, and then you can create new apps like this one, which corresponds to this folder here, and you usually put your code in a new app that goes inside this this setting here. Okay, so the URLs file is where you configure all of the routes for your application. Like for example, here I have a route called admin/, and then after the slash, I'm including all of the URLs from this app here see this Django contrib admin app, which is one of the apps that I imported in my settings file. Okay, so if you follow the setup video and then you come here into this folder and then import those functions into your shell, then you get this nice help here, which allows you to run this command here. Okay, this will bring up a Django server import 8000. Okay, so if I go here /admin, there should be something there. Okay, and I already have created a user here. So this is the Django admin, okay? And what this does is that it lets us edit a database directly. And I didn't have to program almost anything to have this work, except that you see there is this camera table here. Okay, so this is an entity that I created on that camera app. And you see that my application is actually handling all of these different paths here. So if I come back, it handles this path. And if I go back here, it also handles this path. So this is all being handled by Django's built-in admin app. Okay, and all of those URL paths are actually being served by this app right here that I just imported. My cameras app, it also has some stuff in there. In particular, these models by file. Okay, so every app, every Django app must have a file like this one, which is where you define all of the persistent entities of your app. So in this case, I just have a persistent camera entity. Why camera? There's no particular reason. This is just an example to show that you can save things. Okay. So to make this table available in the Django admin, you just have to create this file and then import the admin module and register your camera class here, and then this is enough to make your cameras available for editing in the admin view. Okay, so this is a very useful feature of Django, because you get a free admin web admin console for your application out of the box without any effort. Oh, is that clear so far? Do you have any questions so far? Is this straightforward enough? Yes, there are a lot of different frameworks. Like you said, there is Bottle, there is Web2Py, there is Tornado. There's a bunch of them. Uh, Sorry, I'm not sure if I understand your question correctly. Are you asking about the simpler framework or the most popular? Because they're not the same. Okay, I would say that it's borrow. Uh, borrow or maybe Flask. I it's a tough call actually. Borrow and Flask. Let me type this. The first one is borrow, and the other one is Flask. Those two are very minimalist web frameworks that I think, if I'm not mistaken, those two frameworks they only come with an URL pattern matching feature. Like you see this that I have here with the URLs where I map a URL path to a Python function. Yeah, Django does that, and Borrow does that, and Flask does that too. But Django does a lot of other stuff, and if I'm not mistaken, Borrow and Flask only do this. So you have to import a third-party library to talk to the database. You have to import a third-party library to send emails. No, not send emails. Yeah, Django is very battery included. In those other frameworks, you have to decide to make a lot of decisions of how you're going to do other stuff, which is not necessarily related to the web, to what a web application does. Even talking to the database, you have to plug a database ORM into an application to be able to use it. Is that a good answer for you? Okay, good. So I think Django is the most popular one because it saves you from having to make a lot of decisions about the architecture of your application. See, the framework already comes with a lot of good decisions that you don't even have to think about when creating your application. I think this is why it's very popular. Okay, let's keep on following our topics. So, introduction to Python and Django. Okay, that's that. Now let me make you an introduction to AngularJS. Okay, so can I get a sense of how many of you know how many of you are begin? Let me. How many of you know JavaScript? Know how to program in JavaScript? Okay, good. But how many of you are very experienced in JavaScript? Okay, good. You see, AngularJS is a MVC framework for JavaScript. Okay, what an MVC framework does is separate the M from the V. The M means the model, and the V means the view. Okay, when I talk about model in JavaScript, I'm not talking about the same model that I'm talking about when I say models in Django, right? When I say models in Django, I'm thinking about the persistent classes. When I'm talking about model in AngularJS or in JavaScript, I'm talking about the screen model. I'm talking about the object that actually has all the information that goes in the screen. Let me try to explain this better. Okay, so what AngularJS does is separate the M from the V. So, like for example, you have these two worlds. right? The model world and the view world. In the model world, you create all of the objects and operations that make sense in your business. So you in the model world, you have your users, you have your products, you have an operation to buy a product, you have an operation to add a product to a cart or something like that. And AngularJS lets you write this model in JavaScript. Okay, and in the view world, you have all of the elements that the user interacts with. You have the tables, you have the lists, you have the buttons, you have the inputs, and in AngularJS you implement this with HTML. All right. So what Angular does is that it lets you separate these two worlds, and somehow these two worlds, they have to communicate with each other. And so Angular lets you communicate these two worlds most of the time, like 90% of the time, using something called binding. So for example, when you build a template in AngularJS, which is a piece of HTML, which corresponds to the view, you can like create a table, and then you will declare, hey, the lines of this table will come from the products array that exists in my model. Okay, each table line will be blue. We'll have a CSS class called blue if product.selected is true. You see this input field here. This input field is bound to a variable called product name. So when I don't have any code in screen. I'm just talking abstract. Yeah, sorry. You just have to use your imagination. Okay. Okay. So if you define all that in AngularJS, then what happens is that when you add an element to that products array, then poof, a new line appears on your table. If you set one of these objects products.selected equals true, then poof, that corresponding table line will turn blue. If you type something into that input field, then the actual variable product's name will get updated. And you don't have to do anything, you don't have to do any additional programming to make that happen. So this is one of the very powerful features that makes AngularJS very powerful. Do everyone understand the concepts of binding and separation between model and view, even though I didn't show any code here? Okay, good. I will show you some examples of this in action later. Okay, now my next step here is to show a little bit more about this Django app. Okay, here in my code, you can see my code now, right? Hello? Okay. You see, right here, I included on my Djangular3 urls.py file, I included in this path here, which is like the empty path, all the other paths from my app my cameras app here, okay, and which corresponds to this other urls.py file. Now, here I'm routing a bunch of paths here called API login, API logout, who am I, blah blah blah, to a bunch of functions that it exists on this Python module here. So I wanted to show you how those work. So you see, my backend here is supposed to only be serving JSON APIs, right? So if I go to any of these routes here in my browser, I will not see a web page. I will just see a JSON output. Okay. So for example, you see right here, I have a path called API who am I. You'll just tell me, hey, you know what, you are authenticated and you are a user that has a username called Tony. All right. If I go back to the admin and log out, so I'm now logged out. If I go back to the admin, I want to see the admin again. I will see the login screen. And if I go to who am I, sorry, API, who am I? Yes, this is who you are. You are not authenticated. Okay, so this is how I implement this function here. So by knowing a little bit of how Django works, I can implement this view. So I have a request, and request has a user, and user has an is authenticated method. So if I am authenticated, I will just get the user from this method here, user to dict, which I implemented here. Okay, so this will return a dictionary with my user details. Okay, so this is how I'm supposed to write API methods. All right. Also, yeah, let me remember the order. Show API, show Django admin, which I already did. Okay. Yeah, I think this is enough. This is enough backend for now. Let's jump to the front end. So here I just have some other functions here, right? There is the login function, which actually authenticates the user. This is not the code that runs when I go to this screen here and authenticate here. This will not run this code here. This actually is run by some other part of the application that I will show later. Okay, so is this other method here. This is a method that will receive a parameter, a get parameter from which is a user. Like for example, yeah, let me run this one. API get user details. If I don't pass any parameter, I should get an error. But if I say, hey, here's a username, go get the details from me. So I can get, with this method, I can get some details about any user that exists in my database. Okay. And then there is this other method here called list cameras, which will just retrieve some of the cameras that are in the database. But it doesn't work because I'm not logged in. You see, this method has this decorator here called Ajax login required, which blocks this AJAX call if I'm not authenticated. So if I, let's see, open another tab here and then authenticate first. Now I'm authenticated and I hit refresh here, then you get a different story. So these are the 4 cameras that exists in my database. Let me show them to you. This is my application database in Postgres. Okay, so this is my camera table. Yeah, so Python has this decorator feature where you can decorate a function. So this is another function that will run before this function is executed. This function here is defined in cameras decorators module right here. Okay, so this is where I implement the logic. Hey, if the user is authenticated, then do what you have to do, but if not, just write this polite error message here. Okay. Yeah, so these are this is what Django calls views, which is not a very good name in my opinion, because it kind of conflicts with the view in MVC, and this is definitely not a view. This is more like a controller, but well, that's okay. Yeah, let me talk about a little bit about the front end now. Okay, I'm going to cue this Django backend here. Okay, now if you followed the setup video, then right here you have this this help that you can run from your terminal. Okay, and our front-end code is inside this front-end folder here. Okay, let me close a lot of these tabs here. Okay, now this project has a very clear separation between front-end and back-end. Okay, so the only communication that actually happens between the front-end and back-end will happen through this file here, which is called API.js. You see, this is a JavaScript file that has a bunch of functions that will call our backend APIs, who am I, and login and logout and list cameras and stuff like that. Okay, so you could easily use a different kind of backend with this front end, as long as that backend knew how to answer to all of these URLs. All right. So this front-end project here, it has this gulp file. Okay. So gulp is a build tool that is mostly used to build front-end of applications. All right. So in this case, what I wanted is to have a front-end development environment where I could have a bunch of AngularJS code, JavaScript and AngularJS code here, and then I didn't have to worry about, every time you create a new JS file, then you have to go to your HTML file and then add a new script tag here. So I didn't want to do that kind of manual work. So I have this little command here, which is called front dev. Let me translate this for you. Builds the front end in folder front end dist. The resulting HTML will look for JS files in the folder front end /source. It accepts these parameters: mock, can be true or false, and the default is true. If you pass through, it will use the mock API. You see, this mock API is referring to this other file here, API mock.js. Okay, so this is a little bit of AngularJS code where I'm creating a service called app API. Okay, so this service is an object. You see, this function here will return this API object in the end. Here, return API. Okay, so this is where I tell AngularJS, hey, here's an object called app API, and this object is this JavaScript object right here, which has all of these methods. It has no attributes and has 6 methods right here. And this mock API, it has the same methods that the real API. Okay, the difference is that those methods here, they don't talk to the database at all. They, for example, the list cameras method, it just returns a hard-coded array with 2 cameras in there. The whoami method will return this object here, which can be changed if I call the login method and the logout method. It will affect the result of whoami, just like in the real backend, but this object here is not stored in a backend session object or anything like that. The login method itself it will just accept every username and password. You see, it doesn't even use the let me search for password here. You see, this method, it doesn't care about the password. So if I just pass a username and a password for it, it will just return a fake user that will create like this, and this will affect the whoami method. So this is a way for me to work with the front-end project without having to have a database and a backend and all of the complexity, all of the additional complexity that you have to work with the full project. Okay, so this is kind of useful if you have a team of developers which is many times divided into back-end developers and front-end developers. And you know, the front-end developers, they know a lot of HTML and CSS. They know some JavaScript. They don't know, and they don't care a lot about Python or Java or PHP or whatever the heck you have running on your backend. And they should have a development environment where they can just save a CSS file and hit refresh, and they can test the CSS and their HTML and their JavaScript without having to configure a bunch of other stuff just to make the project work. Okay, so this is mock API. So when I run this command here, front dev, what it does is that it creates this dist folder here. Okay, so this folder, this wasn't here before. You won't get it when you clone the project from GitHub. Okay, this was created by that command. And you see this index.html file here. This was created out of this other index.html here. Let me show you. Okay, now if you compare the two of them, you will see that this comment here was replaced by all of those script tags here. Okay, so these are the JS files that can be found inside this source folder. Okay, now if I go and run this other command here called front run, runs the playground front end on port 901. So this, what this does is it just opens up a web server, a simple web server that share the current files on the current folder, in this case the Djangular3 folder, on port 901. Okay, so this is just a simple HTTP server. Okay, see, you have all the files that you can see on the text editor. So if I go to the dist folder, then go to index.html, okay, now this is the main web application, and this is using the mock API. Like, for example, I can log out here, and it logged out, it did a fake logout, and I can log in, and you can just type anything I want in here. So it logged in here, it's showing me that I logged in as GFD blah blah blah, and I can see this user profile, which is generated by a fake get user details implementation here. Get user details. Where is it? All right. But this allows me to actually develop the whole front end of my application without having to have any back-end code. Okay, is this clear? So far, so good? Okay. All right. What is this? The next topics? Yeah, gulp file. I didn't talk a lot about this little guy here. Hey, you know what? I have a little personal problem here, so I need a 5-minute break. Is that okay? I have a small emergency here, so I need a 5-minute break. So I'll be back in 5 minutes. Okay? Okay. Okay, that's taken care of. Can we go back? Okay, good. Um, where was I? Gulp file. Okay. Now there is this tool called Gulp, which is a build tool. Uh, it's made in JavaScript, but the kind of JavaScript that runs on your terminal, not the one that runs on your browser. Okay, so there is this tool called Node.js that is able to run JavaScript on the desktop. Okay, so if you follow the setup video, there is a step in there to have you install Node.js and npm. And when you install npm, you can go into this front-end folder here, and then here there is this package.json file here. So the purpose of this file here is similar to the purpose of this other requirements text file here. So this is a list of dependencies. This is a list of Python dependencies that you can install with pip, which is a Python package manager tool, right? So in the same way, this package JSON file has a list of JavaScript, Node.js JavaScript dependencies that you can install with npm. Okay, and when you go here and type npm install, I'm not going to run because I already did this, but when you go here, it will download this all of those folders here inside these node modules folder. And one of the things that it downloads is Gulp, because I told it to download here. And then I have this Gulp command here, okay, and I can run commands like Gulp and then a task name like dev, and this will do something. What it will do depends on what is programmed on my Gulp file. In this case, this is my Gulp file. This is a JavaScript code that runs inside Node.js, and this is where I define all of the tasks that Gulp is supposed to run. So when let me look for the dev task. Okay. Now I'm creating a task in Gulp called dev, which just will run all of these other tasks that are inside this array here, common tasks. So when I run Gulp dev, it actually runs all of those tasks in here, and also this task in here. So this task concat.js lib, let's just look at this as an example. This task is actually defined into this JavaScript function called concat task, which takes two parameters, a string that is the task name, and a JavaScript object, which is the task parameters. So this is not a Gulp function. That I define this function right here. Okay. So what it does is it concatenates. Here is creating a task called ig, which is concat.js lib. So what it will do is that it will concatenate all of those JavaScript files here, lib.js, that I defined before, right here. Okay. So these are the libraries that your code use. Okay. So it will concatenate these files here into this other file here inside js lib.js folder. Actually, inside dist /js /libjs. So the result of running gulpdev is, among other things, is that it will take some of these files that are inside front-end lib. Inside here we have a bunch of JS files, and we'll concatenate some of these files, all of these files that are defined in here, and we'll concatenate them and put the result in this file here, which is like all of my third-party JavaScript libraries combined into a single file. And this is usually better for performance because the browser doesn't have to make a lot of different requests to load a bunch of files. Okay, so when I run my front end in port 91, and I go to dist and say index.html, we can see that it's getting all of the libraries, jQuery and Angular, and what else is in there? I don't even remember. It's getting all that from this file here, and it's also getting all of the other files, all of the individual JavaScript files from different files inside the source folder. Why did I do this? Why did I do it this way? Because I wanted to be able to, just come here and change something inside my source folder, like this. And hit refresh here. Don't work. Huh? Why didn't it work? Because I changed the real API, which is not being used by this project. Okay, let's do the other one. API mock. Here's a bunch of files, and I choose just the right one that. Okay, now I hit refresh here. Okay, good, thank you. So this is why front dev, when I run front dev in here, which actually calls gulpdev, let me show you that. Dev sh, front dev, okay. See? So most of the commands here into our bash file will call gulp, will tell gulp to do something. Okay, there is front dev, and then there is front prod and front prod, prod and prod mock. And most of these commands will do something with gulp, and what gulp does is programmed in this build file here. All right? Okay, that was gulp. Yeah, let me tell you a little bit of the difference between front dev and front prod. Okay, you see, let me close this file here and create a new one, just so you can compare the resulting index.html file inside this folder, the difference between them when I generate them with front dev and front prod. Okay. Okay, good. Now, this right here is the index.html file that was generated when I ran the front dev command. Okay, so the HTML file is pointing to script tags inside the source folder, right? Now, this is the same file, but built with front prod. Now, all of these script files were replaced by this other file here. Okay, the application still works. Let me show you. Okay, it still works, but the list of files is different. And now it created another concatenated JavaScript file here with all of my code, not the third-party code. Okay, so this is the kind of build that you want to do before deploying the front-end code inside the Django application. Okay, but when you're developing, you want a fast development cycle. You want to be able to save on your text editor and refresh on your browser, and you don't want to have to run a gulp command every time you save a file. So this is why I have two different build commands. All right. Okay, I think that's enough about dev.sh and gulp file.js. Do you have any questions so far? What command we're talking about? Sorry. Oh, you mean this command here? So okay. I added this command here just to show you that that I can edit a JavaScript file in my source folder and then save it, and then Alt Tab to my development environment and hit refresh and have it work. In this case, it's not working because I just ran a front project. Let me run a front dev again. So I just wanted to show you that this environment allows for a fast development cycle where you can, hey, I'm gonna program stuff here, blah 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 blah, save, Alt Tab, refresh, and boom. I just want to show that anything that you do here is immediately available for the browser right here without you having to do a build command or anything like that. So this was to justify this is to justify to explain the reason that I concatenate the lib files, but I don't concatenate my own JS files in the front dev command. Is that clearer now? Okay. Let's move on. Any more questions? Okay. Project structure and main commands from dev from okay, we already talked about that. And mock API versus real API. Okay, let's see the real API in action now. All right. So first, let me tell you about another path on my Django application. So let me close this and this and this. So let's go back to our URLs file here. Okay, now I have this other route here, okay, which is the empty route, and this route here is actually redirecting this route. This Django route is not invoking any Python code. Okay, it's not invoking any Python code. It's just redirecting to this index.html file. Okay, so this index.html file is not. It has nothing to do with the index.html file that is in the source folder, or even the index.html file that is in the gist folder inside the frontend. Okay, this is another file that is inside our Django templates folder. Okay, this is another index file. So this is not touched, this is not changed in any way by our gulp build. Okay, so I created this file by manually copying the resulting index.html from front prod command here and placing it here, and so this file is not automatically generated. And I changed a few things here. In particular, I changed where this file takes this static content from, the static CSS and the static JavaScript. Okay, so for example, if you go to this folder, the index.html in here is getting the lib.js file from this path, but this other index.html file in here is getting the lib.js file from this path. So this /static here is actually a route in my Django application. And you maybe are confused, hey, you don't have a route called static in here. Yeah, that's true, but in my settings, I said somewhere that I have a static URL that's called /static, and this I don't think, I'm not sure if this is all. I think that's probably all that's needed to tell Django to look for static files inside a folder called static in your app. Okay, so when this file, this index.html file, looks for stuff into the static folder here, this will map to static files into the camera's static folder. Okay, so what I need is that I just need a command to build our front end and copy the resulting JS and CSS files from this folder in here to the static folder in here. Okay, so we already have a command to do that, which is copy to www. Okay, now this command here generated a app.js file in here, which has all of my JavaScript files concatenated. One of them is the app API. Let's see if I can find it. Where is it? We have a bunch of places that are using it. Yeah, so here's the place where it is defined. See, the app.js file that was built has the real API here. See, this is the real implementation, not the mock one. Okay, so when I go to localhost 8000, where my Django application, no, it's not running, it will be. Dev help, it's called front run. No, not front run, Django run. See, now I have two different servers running, right? This is like a real server with a backend and a database, and this is just an simple HTTP server. Okay, now when I go to localhost 8000, it's now opening my index.html file, and then it's pulling JavaScript from the static folder, right? And now I can log out and log in again. And this will not work because I'm talking to a real backend, to a real database here. Okay, so I have to use the credentials for a real user, and this works. Okay, so this is like you build the real application. You see, my whole application is actually not inside my Django project itself. I mean, the only front-end code that I have in my Django project is this index.html file, right? All of the front-end application code is basically inside this app.js file. That includes the HTML code. I repeat, that includes the HTML code that is inside my source folder in the front-end folder here. Because you see here we have a bunch of JavaScript and HTML files, right? And all of this generates a single JavaScript file that has HTML and JavaScript and HTML inside it. Okay, so this is how you this is typically how a single page application looks like. Because you see, now that I'm using this application here, this is not actually doing a refresh anytime. You see the URL is changing, but it has this sharp, this hashtag symbol in here. So this is not actually talking to the backend. It is talking to the backend, but it's doing AJAX calls to the backend, not getting full pages. Okay, let me debug this a little bit, just to show you, just to let you have a better feeling of what this looks like. Like, for example, API. Okay, let's debug, for example, the login function. Okay, so I have somewhere in my application a piece of code that logs me in. So I'm going to log out. Okay, I'm logged out. Let me go to my front page. I'm logged out. You see that I don't have a username right here. Okay, and I'm going to log in now. Login, okay, and then I type Tony. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Boom. Good. Let's look at a little bit of this JavaScript code here. Okay. So someone is calling our app API login function. Okay, with a username of Tony and a password of 1, 2, 3, blah blah blah. Let's see who is this guy. Okay, now we have another service called app login model. So what is this object? This is a model for the login screen. See, the login screen has a model, has an object that represents everything that's in that screen. Okay, so it has a state, which is all of these variables here. Okay, so the state of the screen is as 2 strings in the Boolean. Okay, the 2 strings that map to the username and password, and a boolean that maps to a loading animated GIF file or image or something like that to let the user know that some AJAX call is taking place. Okay, and then you have a method which is mapped to what this button click is supposed to do. Let me show you the template for the screen right here. There you go. You see, here we can see a little bit of what I talked earlier when I was talking about AngularJS. We have an input which is mapping to m.username, another input which is mapping to m.password. We have a piece of text which is only visible if this boolean here is true, and we have a button where its click method is mapped to this m.login method in here. Okay, we could easily replace this with an animated GIF if I wasn't lazy enough to find one. So here we are inside the login screen model, which this object here, app login model, login method. Okay, and it's calling the API login method, passing a username and a password. This method here will return a JavaScript promise, an AngularJS promise that has a then method, and when this AJAX call returns, it will invoke this another anonymous function in here. So I will just put another breakpoint in here, okay, and I will remove this other breakpoint here because I don't need it anymore, and I will just let it go. Okay, nice. So we just made an AJAX call to login. See, here in the network tab, we have login and request header. We somewhere in here that should be, yeah, here's the post data, and here is the response. Okay, so this was generated by our Python code that was in cameras, views, yeah. So this is this object right here, user to jig to blah blah blah, right? So we will be able to get all of this information in JavaScript now. Okay. So this result object that got passed into our callback function, it has a data attribute, which is the actual result from the backend. So this has the username and the permissions that I have. So I use these permissions right here to choose what, for example, to choose if I'm going to show a specific menu right here in the superior tab. Okay. Now I have a logged user here, and since I got one, then I have this other service called app.auth, where I tell it, hey, you know what? You now have an authenticated user, so anyone that needs this object, this other Angular service called app.auth, anyone that needs it to know if there is a user currently authenticated will be able to see. So for example, this toolbar right here on the top of the application uses this app.auth service to see if there is a user logged in. And then I call this other object here state, which is responsible for my client-side routing. You see that I have a bunch of client-side routes in my application. For example, #/login is a client-side route. I'll show this a little bit later. And then this is a piece of functionality taking place. So it just went to home. It changed this URL in here. Okay. I know there's a lot of holes in these explanations. There's a bunch of things that you may not be able to understand right now, because maybe you don't know enough about AngularJS 2. But this should give you like a rough idea of how this application works. So let me have you more questions. Do you have more questions? Really? Okay, good. Now, yeah, so the next topic is actually diving into a little more in the authentication logic. Okay, good. Now, yeah, but before that, let me talk a little bit about the client-side routing. Okay, so let's take a look at a little more code. Okay, now here's our index.html file. Okay, and it may look weird because we don't have a lot of code in there. So how can this little piece of HTML be able to generate a big application like this one, which so many, okay, not that many, but sure a lot more than you would expect for an application this size to have. Now, this application here is has this ng-app attribute in the body element. So this is like telling AngularJS that, hey, this DOM element here is subject to this Angular application here. Okay, and this Angular application here is defined into this app main.js file here. So here I'm creating a module called app_main. Okay, and one of the things that I do in this module is to configure a bunch of client-side routes like this, using this state provider object. Okay, so I have 5 different states called home and admin and cameras and login and view user. Each of these states have a URL. So these are paths that are supposed to appear after the hashtag in our address bar. Okay, and they also have a template, which is a piece of quote HTML code that will be put inside the element that has the UI view attribute. Okay, so basically what this does is that our application has a toolbar. Okay, and this toolbar is defined somewhere else, and it has a div where the contents will be one of these other components here, depending on the URL that I'm in. Okay, for example, let me show you that I can actually change the path just by typing the URL here. Okay, so let's go, for example, to #/cameras. Okay, good. Now let's go to #/login. So I'm changing the URL here. This is not talking to the backend. It's just being intercepted by JavaScript code, and then it's changing the DOM part of my page that goes inside this div here. Okay, in those components here are what we call in Angular, we call them directives. Okay, so for example, this app toolbar here is defined in this components toolbar app toolbar JS file. Okay, now this is how we create a directive in AngularJS. So we have a directive called app toolbar. So this is what allows me to use a new tag script called app toolbar. Okay, and this is a component that has a template and has a little bit of JavaScript code, right? So, for example, in our app toolbar, there is a controller which is like the JavaScript code that is bound to this template here. Okay, roughly speaking. And in this controller, we ask Angular to inject this particular service here, app_auth. Okay, now this app_auth here is another object. This is defined here. Okay, so this is just an object that can be used in any place in our application if there's any place that needs to know information about the currently logged user. Okay, so now the toolbar is very interested in knowing if there is a current logged user, because, for example, if it's not authenticated, then the top right corner of the screen should display a login button. But if we are authenticated, then we should show what the username is and a drop-down menu to see his profile and an option to log out. Okay, and here in this template we are using this auth object a lot. Okay, now this auth object is where is it? Is this auth variable that I added to this $scope object. So, and this actually points to this service here, which is this object here. Okay, so this little guy here, it knows how to log out. It knows how to determine if the user has some permissions, like for example in the toolbar we actually ask, hey, are you an admin? If you are an admin, then show this element here, which with an admin option. Okay. Now, as I showed you before, we have one of the routes here is this login route. Okay, this login state, which adds this other component to the screen. Where is it? Login, app login. So here we have another directive called app login, and this is its controller. So it has this M object that we can use on the screen. The screen is here. Okay, app login HTML. So I showed you this before. Now, when we do login, it will call the m.login method. Now, what's m again? M is this object here. Is the login model, right? So when I say model in AngularJS, I'm referring to the JavaScript object that is like behind the actual screen that the user is looking at, right? So this HTML file has this M object behind it, which is the model of the screen. Okay, and this M object is this object right here. And one of the things that, actually the only thing that it knows how to do is to log in by using the app API. In this case, if we use the real API and talk to the real backend, and then when it logs in, if it successfully logs in, then it will tell, hey, you know, the auth service, I just got a new user. Now you can let everyone know that we are authenticated. So this is where we do that, and then we tell the client-side routing system to go to a new route, to a new state called home. So this is why when we log on, we change the URL, the client side, the hashtag path from hashtag/login to hashtag nothing, because we just went home. Let me show you this again. If I click OK here, I'm using the mock API now because I'm on 901. So pay attention to this URL here. Okay, so state go home, just did that. All right, and this is how we can implement even the authentication part of our application without getting a new page from the server. Okay, how are you guys finding it so far? I'm thinking you're awfully quiet. Okay. Okay. Right. I'm really I really want to know if they are just shy, or they are really understanding everything I'm talking about, or maybe they or perhaps they don't understand and they are afraid to ask. Okay. Okay, sure. Yeah. Uh, hey guys, maybe you can send selfie pictures making funny faces on WhatsApp just to loosen up. Yeah, like that's gonna happen, right? Okay. Let's okay. Let's carry on. Um, so, yeah. Okay. Now, there's also these authenticated Ajax that I would had to show you. I kind of already did, but let me show you again. See, when you're logged in our application, let me go to the real deal here. Yeah, so I'm authenticated here. If I log out, I still have this cameras menu here, which will just, you see down here, look down my screen, this is just a link to hashtag/cameras, and here's an alert that's telling, hey, you're not logged in, right? This happens because, as I showed you before, I have a backend API here called list cameras. This is actually a method, an API method that is called by our cameras state here. So let's go again into our app main.js file. You see that we have a camera state here with this URL and this template, right? Let me close a bunch of these files. Okay. Now I have cameras and okay, cameras.js and cameras.html. We have in cameras.html just a list of cameras that are inside this repo.cameras object. Okay, and this repo is this repo object here, which points to this Angular service called cameras repository, which is this model here. So this is our screen model. It doesn't have any method in it. It just has state, but it doesn't have any behavior because it doesn't have any method, but it has state, right? Because this screen right here, let me log in again. It just has a list of cameras which are being pulled from the database. So it doesn't have any buttons, it doesn't have any behavior, so it's only fair that the model behind it doesn't have any methods, right? Because the screen doesn't do anything, it just lists stuff. And this model here, during its initialization, it will call, hey, you know what? I just told you a lie. It actually has a method here. Because, yeah, sorry about that. This is the object state, and this is this Angular extend method. It just copies properties from second object to first object. So this is more like the same thing that doing this. Okay, this is equivalent, really. I just like to do it this way because I like to have my object to look at it and see that, hey, this is a state and this is behavior, and I have a clear separation between them. Okay, I could also do this for that matter. Then have this commented out, and this is probably good enough to show me there is a separation. Actually, I'm going to go with this. Okay. So this model here has this state and this init method, which is being called by a control here. So whenever we go into this stage and create this directive here, this component here, it will call this method again. So if I go home and then go here, you see that it's probably too fast for you to see, but if I put a breakpoint in here, I'll probably be able to see it. Cameras repository, init. Okay. Okay, now see this loading text here. This is because in the template we have this span here. It only shows when loading is true. Okay, since the Ajax call runs so fast, you don't see it And then when it returns, we have a bunch of cameras inside the m.cameras attribute. Okay, but we have somewhere in our code, which I don't remember very well now, probably in the API JS, no. Yes, here. Okay. See here in our API object, API method, API service, it uses another service called app-ajax to make the Ajax calls to the backend. Okay. Normally, you would use another service from Angular to make Ajax calls. Another service called $HTTP. Right. In this case, I created this other object here because I wanted to be able to do more stuff with how Ajax is done. Right. So this object here is somewhere in commons app-ajax. Okay. So this object here just has the same get and post methods that HTTP has. So this is how you make Ajax in AngularJS. Okay, and my get and post methods will just call the same get and post methods from $HTTP, and they return promises in the same way that these objects also return promises. But my Ajax service, it also knows how to receive an error handler so that every time an error occurs, then this handler will be called. Okay. Now, in my main application configuration, I just set this handler to tell, hey, whenever you get an error that has 401 status, which means an authentication problem, then you show this alert here. You are not logged in. Please log in to have access to this functionality. All right. So happens to be the case that when you call list cameras on a non-authentication connection, you get a 401, right? So this is why when you go to this view right here, when you're logged in, it works. But when you're not logged in, if you go there, it doesn't work anymore. Oh, it's still showing this because the service state didn't change. But if I refresh the page, which will load all of the JavaScript code. Okay, now you get the error and you get an empty page. Okay, so you can have pieces of your API that require authentication, and you can have other pieces of API that don't. Okay, by using a decorator like this one, but your front end must be prepared to deal with those kinds of errors. Okay, is that clear? No questions so far? Okay. Okay, now let me show you the docs. This is awesome. Okay, so right here I was showing you the index.html file. What? No. What happened? Wah, wah, wah. Okay. The index.html file, which is like the same application that will run in like production with the real backend and stuff like that. Okay. Now, I created this other page here called docs, and this actually uses a bunch of JavaScript code that is outside the source folder. There's this other doc source folder. So this contains what I call the doc system, right? So this is like a small platform, if you will, to let you create test pages for your components, okay? And the way that this thing works is that you can anywhere in your application call a service called component catalog. Let me show you inside the JavaScript file. So you can where is it? Cadê, macho? Okay, here it is. You can call a service called component catalog, and by calling this method on it, you can add a new test page for a given component. Okay, so let's create a new test page like this. So this test page will have a title of my test page. It will be inside the same category, and we'll call it my test page.html. It doesn't have any additional source code, and then it's in the same folder, and we just have to create this HTML file here. Then let's type something here, div, then h1, and I already did this on the video, right? But I want to do it again. Save this and save this and hit refresh. It doesn't work. Why is that? I don't know. Maybe we have an error here. No. What happened? Oh, we're looking at the front prod. Okay, front dev. Refresh. Okay, now we have a source folder. Now we're talking. Okay, now I have this a menu here with all the test pages that were added to the doc system, right? Like that. And here we have a test page DOM, right? Inside our application. And here we have the source code that was used to generate it. Okay, so this is like a real simple example, but here's a more complex example where I create a component called to do right here. Okay, so we have this directive here, this component called to do. It has a model, it has a template here, which is just let me close a bunch of these files, which is just a list with a bunch of to-dos and an input where you can type a new to-do, and when you hit the add button, it will call the add method on the model, right? Here we have the model of the to-do component, which has a string that is bound to this input here, a list of to-dos, which is an empty array, and an add and remove method that act to change this object somehow. So for example, when you call the add method, it will add an object to this to-dos array, having the to-do description which is pulled from this string in here. And then after it does that, it will set that string to an empty string again. So this is what makes, like for example, take the trash out. When I click this button, then this text will vanish. Okay? Blah blah. Okay, and this test page was added. So this is the trick. For the docs system to work, all of the test pages code must be inside a folder called docs, and you can create a docs folder anywhere in your source folder. Okay, so the gulp file, the gulp build that front dev runs will understand that, and this JavaScript code will not be added into your index HTML file, but it will be added to your docs HTML file. Okay, so this is not added to the application. So in this to-do sample, I create a new test page here, which will load this HTML file here, and this HTML is just a template that has this controller here, which I also created inside my sample.js file. Okay, I'm creating a controller, and then our to-do sample uses it, and it has a button that calls this method from the controller that is able to talk to the to-do model and add a new to-do in there, like from the outside, using this button here. And then we add the to-do component itself on the screen. Okay, and we can see it in action. So this is the external button, the add laundry button, and everything else is the component template itself. So if I click the button, we'll add this guy right here, and you can see all of the source code that was used to generate this page, and it gets this only from looking at these attributes here when I added the test page. So why do we have why is it a good idea to have a docs system like this? First, it lets you develop components independently. You can work on separated components in an isolated manner without interference from other parts of the application, right? Second, you get a component catalog that you can like publish online for your development team, for other stakeholders on your project, where you can make proofs of concept and prototypes and demonstrations, and before actually writing the real code and all the backend and stuff like that. So I think this kind of practice helps the development process of medium to big sized projects. Okay. Do you see the value in this? Do you have any questions? Yes, sure. I understand there's a lot of new concepts in here so it's normal to need some time to digest all of it. Okay, let me skip this one. I'll just real quick. I'll just show real quick that this application has some Python test somewhere. This is a very simple Python test, and there is a command to run them, which is pytests. Okay. Okay, good. And there is also JavaScript tests. You see, in the JavaScript tests, they're supposed to go in the docs folder too. Okay. So here we have a JavaScript unit test, which is called to-do test. Okay. And what it does is that it gets this to-do tester object here, which is an Angular service. And in this object, I have these methods here, which are supposed to map to what a user is supposed to do with a to-do model, right? So there is this type and add method, and then assert count to-dos to make sure that it's like 3 to-dos on it, and assert that there's a given text inside of a to-do. And what it does is it uses the to-do model, which is the screen model for the to-do component, to implement all of those methods right here. For example, type and add will set the new to-do string and then call the add method, and then we'll do some sanity checks here and do some things. And then our JavaScript tests is very easy to read, because hey, let's test a to-do component, right? So we don't test the component itself, we test its model. Okay, so hey, we start out with 0 to-dos, and then we type some stuff in it, and then hey, we added 3 things inside it, so we supposed to have 3 things on it. Then we remove the second one, and then now we only have 2, and the second one has a text, which is this text right here, which is the third one that I added. Now, how do I run this test? That's why I have the help, because I have a bad memory. Now this will run that JavaScript code in a browser called Phantom.js. Okay, and it actually, differently from the Python test command, which runs the tests and then exit, this command here, it will run the JavaScript tests and then keep running them every time something changes. So for example, if I change something here on this file here and hit save, you can see that it will run the test again, right? And if I do something wrong and save, something wrong will happen. And if I save again, it fixes it again. I can debug this test by going to this address here, so I can make it run not in Phantom.js but in Chrome. So if I open this page, it will run all of the same tests that are running on my terminal here. So it even let the terminal know that it ran in a different browser. See, but if I want to debug the test, then it's better to go to this /debug HTML. Then we can hit F12. Now we have some code somewhere that has our test code. Okay. So for example, I want to put a breakpoint on my to-do model add method. And then I'm going to run them again by just hitting refresh. Good. Someone is calling the add method. Let's see who is it. Okay, it's our to-do tester, which is being called by our test here. So we can inspect and see why a test is broken and stuff like that. Okay. So we can debug, we can write and debug JavaScript tests, and this is a very good thing. All right. So it's a nice idea to have your test cases speak a language like that one, right? This is almost like, this almost feels like an executable requirement, doesn't it? Hey, I have a to-do model, and if I add 3 things on it, then there should be three things on it right there. So if I didn't have this to-do tester object inside my test here, this piece of code would be much bigger and much more complex, and wouldn't be easy to maintain. Because you see, when you have a big project which have a bunch of unit tests in it, and one of them breaks, it usually breaks in someone else's hand, right? The programmer that has to fix it is most likely not the same one that that created the test. So the impulse and that the programmer has, especially because we are always in a hurry, right? We are always under tight deadlines. The impulse is to, do the smallest thing that fixes the test, and sometimes that means skipping the part where you actually read the code and understand what it does before doing the right thing to test. So when you have tests that read like this, then the easiest thing to do is to actually read and understand the code, right? And it makes it easier to fix when it breaks. Actually, if you show that to your manager, he will be able to understand this code, right? If he just knows a little bit about code, not necessarily if he knows how to code, right? So this is a little bit that I had to say about testing the JavaScript code. Okay, I think we are running past the time, but this is just a summary of the best practices that we saw in this hangout today. So have an executable help. So this is dev.sh, that dev help command. This helps a lot new programmers in your project to be able to have development environment, because all the commands, everything that he's supposed to do is already programmed into a bash file, and he doesn't have to remember all the commands to work with the project. Also, another good practice is that everything in our application are components, right? Even whole pages like the login page. Let's see. The login page is a component, the camera page is a component, the admin page, and so on and so forth. And these components use other components, so you can create an AngularJS big application as a composition of components that use other components and so on and so forth, and you implement these components with Angular directives. All right, have a mock API. So we have a real API and a mock API, and they have the same methods, right? The client of this object, it doesn't know which is which. It doesn't know that he's using a mock API, and the mock API, instead of actually talking to the server, they mock a web delay of, in this case, 500 milliseconds using this other AngularJS service called $timeout here to pretend that they are doing an AJAX call that takes half a second to complete. Okay, so if you do that, you will have a development environment that will let front-end developers work on your project without having all of the complexity that back-end developers need. Have a component catalog. Docs is helpful in more than one different way. It helps developers having an environment where they can develop components in an isolated manner. It also have your project to have an available display of components and documentation on how to use them, and also proofs of concept that or prototypes that only work on the front end that you can show to managers and clients and stakeholders to validate ideas before fully implementing them. Because when you're writing software, you will always make mistakes. So you need ways to make mistakes cheaply, right? So make the cheap mistake, not the expensive mistake of implementing a big functionality and then showing to your client and then having him say, this is not exactly what I wanted. So having a doc system like this lets you show more incomplete work, but stuff that he can see and interact with and validate ideas and tell you where you are wrong, and you will be wrong, but this will be cheaper, right? And another good practice is, first write some JavaScript tests, because in this architecture you can see that most of our code will be JavaScript. Most of our work will be happening inside the front-end folder, not inside the Python code. So if you don't have JavaScript tests, this will mean that like 70% of your code base won't be tested. So you have to consider the idea of writing JavaScript tests. And when doing so, try to have your tests talking in a language that's closer to the business and more further from the objects and the APIs and stuff like that. Okay, so these are some of the good practices that are inside of this project. There are more that are documented in these 3 blog posts right here. Where is it? Here, yes. All right. So this actually maps to a different GitHub repository called fstatic2, but this is very similar to the front-end folder that we have here, and in this blog post, there are a few more details that I didn't show you in this hangout, but so that's why I encourage you to take a detailed look at this. Okay. So I think that concludes what I had to talk about to you today, guys. I I hope you liked it, and I think I have a few more minutes for questions if you want to ask them. Nice. It will be nice to hear their voice. I'm waiting for it. Yes. Okay. First, the first thing first, you need to get familiar with this. This is probably a new way to build web applications for you. So you should spend some time and play with that repository. Maybe apply some of these ideas in some projects of your own. Uh, Maybe dive a little bit into learning AngularJS because there's a whole new beast, and there's a lot to learn into that alone. Uh, you see, I have this whole new architecture that I have to I want to make in a new version of the Freedom Sponsors website, but there's a bunch of things that I need to work out before I'm able to actually give some other people actual tasks that will be useful for the project, mostly related to web design, because I don't even have a new web design for the site. I'm working on it. I'm not actually a good web designer. I'm not a web designer at all, but I have another friend who is, and he's helping me with that. So what I'm trying to say is that you have some time to study and learn a lot of things before I'm able to actually use your help to build the new freedom sponsors that I want to build. Yes, that's my intention. Sure, let's keep talking. Thank you. Bye bye, guys. Right. Talk to you on WhatsApp. Please write something. Cheers. Bye bye. Okay. I'm hanging up now. Bye bye. caras não mandam nada. Puta merda, esqueci de parar a gravação.